Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about countable earnings for the purpose of filing a disability application. So if you're kind of new to the process or you're about to kind of dive into it, just know that essentially Social Security is the easiest way to think of them, in my opinion, is they're an insurance company. And aside from having, for disability purposes, aside from having medical conditions, you still have to meet kind of the definitions of disability, right? So there are some people out there who either have suffered an injury or an illness and have had work after whatever date that might have happened, whether that work is ongoing or it has stopped. Oftentimes what Social Security will try and do is suggest to you that you allege the date that you stopped working. For some people it could be a week, for others it could be a month, for some people it could be years, or for others it could be never. Maybe they were born with a condition and they started to work as an adult at 18, whatever it might have been, and that work is maybe over the restricted amount, but depending on your situation at work, you could have things that reduce what your countable earnings are for the purposes of Social Security. So in Section 1 of this policy, which is DI 10505.010, again determining countable earnings, it jumps into subsidies. So let me just break down this title here real quick, okay? Determining countable earnings. So let's say that you're at a job where you're making $25,000 a year, right? If you have none of the things that we're about to go over, Social Security will count that as $25,000 a year, and realistically, you're going to be over the limit. But let's say that you have subsidies, you have expenses because of your condition, so whether it's medication, transportation costs, specialized equipment, things like that, and they to be clear, they have to be reoccurring. Then maybe they don't count 25. Maybe they're able to reduce it to 20, or maybe even less than that, right? So that's really what this policy goes over. There's other things too, but that's kind of the meat and potatoes of this, is making sure that Social Security is reviewing your employment situation and any kind of special treatment, special consideration, or expenses that you might have that are involved in that period of employment, as it's either as it was in the past, or maybe as it is now, or ongoing moving forward in the future. Okay, so the first one that they're going to talk about in this policy is subsidies. Subsidies is essentially when, just to keep it as simple as possible, because I could go on for a very long time. Essentially, subsidies is when the employer knows that you have either disabilities or certain limitations because of your disabilities, right? So they're aware, and they still work with you. They still, maybe you're a good employee, maybe they like you, for whatever the reason might be. They know that you have limitations and basically ignore it. Okay, so this would be like, let's say that you and Joe John down the street, you both get hired at some retail store. Joe John, who is totally able-bodied, has no disabling conditions whatsoever. He makes $11.50 an hour, and he works, 40 hours a week. Then you come in through whatever program. Maybe it's through Voc Rehab. Maybe it's through some sort of county program, state program, whatever it might be, some sort of college incentive, right? Or maybe none of that. Maybe you go in there, you apply, you say that that you have disabilities or you have limitations, and they still hire you. And you have the same position as Joe John, making the same amount per hour, but maybe they allow you to take more time off, right? Maybe because your conditions are getting aggravated. Maybe you have doctor's appointments. Maybe you have something going on physically. They allow you to take longer breaks, either bathroom breaks, lunch breaks, 15-minute breaks, whatever it might be. These types of things are considered subsidies, right? So there's a form that the employer can fill out. They can either articulate it themselves. Oftentimes it's very difficult for them to do. And so what Social Security will revert to, that's what Section 2 is, right? It's basically them talking about, okay, this is what we consider we give them. And sometimes it's very hard to list. So what I often do with my clients is this is a public form here. So if you go to Google, you can find this form, the SSA 3033. And this is basically Social Security's version of kind of what they're trying to find out. And so I'll probably do another video on that form kind of going over it. But really, it just makes it easier for the employer to identify the types of, the amount of the subsidy. And on this particular form, it goes from 50 to 100%. 50% meaning that you do half of the work as somebody else making the same amount in the same position, right? So if you're making $25,000 at that point, they're counting it as 12.5 or whatever it would be, 12,500, which now puts you under the restriction amount, which is called SGA, substantial gainful activity. So if you're over SGA, Social Security is going to deny your claim. It won't even be, they're not saying that you don't have a medical condition. Again, because of those definitions, they're not saying that you don't have a medical condition. They're saying that you're making too much money to meet the definition of disability on the non-medical or the technical aspect of it, right? So the definition of Social Security's definition of disability is a condition that's preventing you from working substantially for 12 months or longer, or that results in the person passing away. It's substantial, what kind of defaults to that SGA term, right? Substantial gainful activity. So each calendar year, there is a new limit of what they consider, and that usually has to do with cost of living adjustments, of what they consider to be substantial gainful activity. This year, it's $1,470. Last year, it was $1,350. Next year, it's probably going to be a little bit higher. Okay, so keep that in mind. So again, what this form is doing is it's reducing what Social Security, right, the countable earnings, it's reducing your countable earnings from, as the example, $25,000. Maybe if they're electing the maximum subsidy on this form, now they're only counting it as 12.5 or whatever half of $25,000 is. Then scrolling down further, kind of let's go back up here to question 1, right? So again, we kind of already touched base childhood disability. You're born with maybe I've seen a lot. I would say the biggest employer that is most common around anybody's area is going to be Goodwill. Goodwill oftentimes will hire people who have very clear disabilities that they were born with. That could be autism, it could be Down syndrome, something like that. And there's a very clear, like this person was born that way, or it developed at a very young age. Mental impairment, this is usually, I would say probably like something like severe PTSD, which if anybody didn't know, a lot of people when they hear the term PTSD, they think of like the military basically, but the most common people that have PTSD are people who have been in car accidents, which that's, kind of eye-opening there, and understandable. Let me see here. There's one on here. Oh, military personnel, right? This is a huge one. This section of policy right here, I personally have seen people in the past who are active duty military and coming back from, maybe it was a catastrophic event at a training exercise, or more apparently the Middle East. They're still active duty. They're still getting a paycheck, which they would, but they're on like LLD, which is light limited duty, or maybe no duty at all, or they're in. I personally, I was in the Middle East. I also served in the military, and I was in the Middle East with a couple people who kind of took a direct hit. And when we rotated back to the United States, one of them was on a medical hold for like a year and a half. Right, so that would be an example of, he's not doing anything but medical appointments and medical boards and things like that. He's not really doing his job. So that could be a fantastic example of a subsidy, and you can see that it goes into its own policy talking about that right here, which I'm not going to go over to that now. So here's covered the form. Okay, so we did the military service. Now this is going over, if the subsidy form is not returned, how they can verbally communicate with the employer and some of the questions that they might want to ask. then coming down here, precise monetary evaluation is not feasible, right? So all they're going to do, if they get the form back, like I was mentioning before, all they're going to do is just say, okay, if you have a 60% subsidy, now they're only going to count 40% of your wages is what they should be doing. Special conditions provided by the employer and or organizations other than the employers, other than the individual's employers. So I actually had a client once before where he was employed at Home Depot. Home Depot was paying him an hourly wage, let's just say, I think it was like $18 an hour. But half of that came from a third party, right? So Home Depot, from them, they were paying him $8 an hour, $8.50, whatever, $9 an hour. And then this organization was coming up with the other half. I guess they were paying, I'm not sure how totally it was worked out, but they basically were providing a stipend. They were giving a stipend to the employer to pay the disabled person who had been disabled since birth, kind of like a full living wage. And because of that, and because of the other subsidies that he had at work, because again the employer knew that he was disabled, and kind of catered to his needs and his limitations, at face value his wages were no longer above SGA; they were below SGA. And I initially came across him actually because the work wasn't developed properly, and he had not only did he have a massive overpayment, I think it was like $50,000, but his benefits, so his monthly check and his Medicare were stopped when they did the work review. So after communicating with the employer, getting all the information we needed, got his overpayment completely removed. Got the benefits turned back on, his Medicare turned back on, and because it took a few months to get this all squared away, he got back paid for that period of time as well. The Section B of this policy, impairment-related work expenses, right? So this would be like that equipment that I was referring to, right? So you have out-of-pocket reoccurring expenses every month, where you have to pay for maybe, equipment or transportation, something like that. That's where this comes into play. Social Security will ask you for the receipts. So make sure that if you do have, let's say that you have high medication costs, maybe whether with or without insurance, maybe your medication costs are a couple $100s every month and you're working. That couple $100s should be reduced from your countable wages every month, and maybe that makes the difference for you. Also a big thing as well that I don't think a lot of people realize is Section C and D are pretty huge, right? So if, let's say, you get sick pay or vacation pay, that should not be counted against you whatsoever in any way. And if you've had a work review in the past and that was counted, you definitely want that work review reopened if it had some sort of adverse action in creating maybe an overpayment or even possibly terminating your benefits. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to people where it's just like that last month they go over and it creates this huge overpayment. So let's say that it's been 2 years since you had the work review, but the last out of that 24-month period, maybe 12 months into it was your last month of SGA, and it was only that 1 month that did it, and subsequently everything that you got paid after that month is now part of your overpayment, and your wages were counted incorrectly. So now you have a situation where possibly you get very much like that case I just mentioned, where you get your overpayment removed and you get your benefits turned back on. I've seen that so many times. It's bananas. And the best way to avoid these things, the single best way to avoid these things, is by making sure you turn in your pay stubs timely. And if you haven't seen my other video on getting receipts for turning in your pay stubs, make sure to watch that. because your pay stub is really the only thing that's going to verify like your vacation time, your sick time down here in D, if you got paid some sort of bonus or something like that. As long as the bonus, let's say like you work at a retail store and the store does well for the year. So in December, you get like this fat bonus. It's going to show up on your W-2, which means Social Security is going to know about it, right? But on your pay stub, it's going to say this is like an inventory bonus for the entire store. Versus, let's say, like like commission or something like that for past work. Then at that point, yeah, that's so important to make sure that's counted too, counted correctly as well, because that commission should be based off of when you did the work, not when you got paid the commission. So let's, as an example, say that you did whatever you were doing, right? You ended up having 5 clients that you were going to draw a commission check from. And maybe all those checks come separately normally, or maybe they all just happened to hit at once and they were all for the same month, right? Like the work was done all in the same month, but they landed differently. Now where you might have been overpaid and used one of your working while disabled months, it's spread out now. So now maybe instead of it all counting for 1 month, it counts for 3 months. And now you have 3 less months in your extended period of eligibility, or maybe that third month was the month that terminated your benefits, right? So you want to make sure that everything, you're your best advocate. You want to make sure that you turn your pay stubs on time, that you get the receipt for turning in your pay stubs on time, that you write on your pay stubs kind of like some identifiable information about yourself. I recommend, and they'll tell you not to do it, but I recommend writing your Social Security number. Because if you write your date of birth and they have your name and your date of birth, they're going to try and look you up, and maybe they mistype a key or something and then just say, oh, I can't find it. They'll be real quick to say, I can't find this person, and just shred it. But if your Social Security number's on that pay stub, you're good to go. Your pay stub receipts is another great way that's your proof that they have your information or had it. Making sure that if you know you're overpaid or you're going to be overpaid, and it might be hard, but don't spend that money, because if you know that you owe it back, believe me, that letter's coming. If everything was done properly and you're still overpaid, that letter's going to come saying that you owe that money back, and it's just, I guess, pick your poison at that point. You're either going to owe the people that you have your bills with, or you're going to owe Social Security. One way or the other, you're going to owe that money back. But yeah, that's the best way to avoid kind of all of this and make it less stressful on yourself. Again, I recommend that you go to my website. I have, under resources, I have a kind of like a wage reporting template to help you keep track of when you turn everything in, along with your receipts. Your wage reporting receipts that you would get back from Social Security, and just organization. I know for some people it's very difficult, especially depending on their conditions. It can be very difficult, but go to the dollar store, get a 3-ring binder, go to my website, print out the wage reporting log, and that's your start, right? Those 2 things is a great start. And then once you start building those habits of every month that you're working, turn in your pay stubs, get your receipt. Don't put them in the mailbox, or not the mailbox, the drop box. That's probably the worst thing you can do, because now your visit there is not even recorded, right? Pull the ticket, spend the time, or if you're going to mail them, make sure that not only do you use tracking information, but on whatever receipt that you're keeping, write down what pay stubs they were. Maybe make a photocopy for yourself, again, to keep in your binder and keep that tracking information. And still, you should, even if you mail them, you fax them, you turn them in person, you put them in the Dropbox, whatever you do, you should still be getting the wage reporting receipt that shows, it will itemize all of the pay stubs that you've turned in. Whether you turn in 1 receipt, right, or 10 if you turn in 1 pay stub or 10 at the same time, it will say on that receipt, it will either say, okay, if you turn in 1 pay stub, here's the pay stub you gave us. If you turn in 10 pay stubs, here's all 10 pay stubs on that 1 receipt that you turned in, and that's your proof to kind of make sure that everything's being done correctly. As we go down to deeper into the policy, you can see here cafeteria plans. I work disability claims for, I'm probably a few thousand claims deep at this point. I can tell you I've never seen not to say that they're not out there, but I've never seen a cafeteria plan. So that's more of a rare circumstance, but again, that should probably, I'm sure this is here to say you shouldn't be counting anything that they might have paid for a cafeteria plan because that's an expense. Royalties and similar payments. I think I saw this once, some guy getting paid for a commercial, or a more popular, I would say, is a probably like an insurance salesman. So maybe I've seen a little more. I can't remember if that is considered a royalty or not. But yeah, that's the nitty gritty of this policy. I would say probably C and D are the two biggest that get overlooked by the Social Security Administration. They're going to look, here's what they're going to do. They're going to get your pay stub. They're going to look at the gross amount for that pay stub, that pay period, and they're going to look at the dates. That's it. 99% of the time, that's exactly what they're going to do. So if you had if you had 8 hours of vacation on there, they might not, their eyes might not be focused on it. So if you wanted to cite when you turn in your pay stubs, whatever pay stubs that you might have, vacation time, holiday time, or any sort of that special pay that maybe you didn't directly work for, I would write this on here, this policy citation, and then even put, whichever subsection might apply. So you could put, that policy number and then D, and then maybe even circle or underline that you got paid vacation pay with a little note that says, please do not count this, these particular wages against me for this period.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your bell notifications so that you're always notified whenever I'm posting new content. If you have a question or want me to cover another topic, please leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to address it as soon as possible. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day.